Thank you for being here at a moment when so many of us are feeling angry, afraid, and just sad. My name is Katie Paris. I am the founder of Red Wine and Blue. We're a community of over 500,000 women working together all across the country to defeat extremism, and that feels very important right now. Renee Good, she was a 37-year-old mom. She just dropped her child off at school, and she was out on the lookout for her community when she was shot in the face and killed by a federal ICE agent in Minneapolis, just a mile from where George Floyd called out for his mother. Whether we mother kids, grandkids, nieces, or nephews, or our communities, our neighbors, we are all here tonight as moms for good. We understand that those in power are intent on instilling fear in us so that we are discouraged from speaking up, so we throw up our hands in the air and do nothing. Fear is powerful, but we're not going to let it stop us from speaking up or feel discouraged. Instead, we're going to channel our heartbreak. We're going to channel it into action in ways that sustain us and those that we love. So tonight, here's what we're going to do, because I recognize right now that might sound like a pretty tall task. And that's why we have brought in some heavy hitters to help us tonight. We're going to hear from some of the most inspiring women leaders that I know. We're going to learn what happened on that Minneapolis neighborhood street from a former deputy director of the FBI. We're going to discuss how to navigate a media environment right now that is so deeply fueled by disinformation. We're going to hear from moms on the ground across this country who are standing up to ICE in their own communities. We're going to get expert advice on how we can all do that in our own ways and stay safe. And then we're going to take action, because no matter who we are or where we live, there is something all of us can do to hold our elected officials accountable, to protect our neighbors, and to build our movement. Finally, you are going to want to stay on until the very end to hear how we can process our feelings so that we can move forward. We are going to be addressing our mental health tonight. Before we start, I do want to thank our partners in this event: Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, Mothers Out Front, Mother Forward, Chamber of Mothers, Parents Together, Vote Mama. And y'all, these groups working together, we are just getting started. Okay, so now I want to bring on women who know a lot about speaking truth to power and the power that we can all have to make huge change. So with that, I want to bring on Holly Holliday, the founder of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action, and Reshma Sojani, who is the founder of Girls Who Code and Moms First. Thank you all for joining us. I could do like hour-long or plus more Zooms than that with every single one of you. I want to have these deep, long conversations, but having you all on one Zoom screen is pretty incredible too. Thank you. Thank you for being with me tonight and with
Thank
all of us here.
you.
For bringing us together, Katie.
Yes, yes,
Yep. Thank you.
It feels
I
good to be
appreciate
together.
it.
Hey,
It does.
Shannon, can we start with you? You started Mom
Sure.
Demand Action, and you did that in the wake of Sandy Hook, because you believed that, we've got to stand up to the powerful lobbying of the NRA. What helped you move from fear and grief into action? And what advice do you have for us right now?
Ugh, I was so angry. I went to bed devastated in tears, and I woke up so mad. I knew I had to do something. And I grew up in the 80s, and I was really inspired by Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I had seen what they had done and what they had accomplished. And I thought, we need a moms group to take on this special interest that was so wealthy and so powerful and was killing people. And that ended up being something that was so incredibly important and powerful, passed over 500 gun laws, stopped the NRA's agenda every year for a decade, passed the first federal legislation on this issue. But it was because we came together collectively, and there were so many learnings. And, one thing I'm thinking about is gun violence impacts so many of us in this country. And I want to remember that, not every death gets the same attention, not every tragedy mobilizes the same movement. And I just want to remember that we are here tonight because of Renee's death, but also there's so many atrocities being committed by ICE, right? They're just not being caught on video. Sexual assaults and deaths in detention centers, children being separated from their parents, people being denied due process. And I know we're going to talk a lot about this tonight, but we're living in one of the most challenging moments in our nation's history, right? And it's really easy to despair and to feel powerless. But there are things we can do. And I know you might be saying, oh, I voted, I wrote letters to my newspapers, I went to protests, I posted on social media, I did all the civic activities I was taught to do. And yet that stuff didn't work, or it feels like it didn't work. So I know you're going to go into more depth, but I'll just tell you what I have learned in the last decade is that you have to find your own power, right? We all have power and we all have different values, abilities, and desires. So figure out what you are capable of and what should your response be that reflects your unique identity and capabilities. Find your community. We're in one right here tonight. Red, Wine, and Blue and Trouble Nation has communities all over the country. Get involved in those, right? I realized when Sandy Hook happened that I was sort of living in a bubble and I needed to get out of my community. Be in it for the long haul. This doesn't end with elections in November, right? Alice Walker said activism is the rent I pay to live on the planet. None of us can afford to stay on the sidelines. And the last thing I would just say is find joy. We we are no good to ourselves, our families, our communities, each other if we don't have joy in our lives. Even though we're coming together tonight about something horrific, there is joy in community. And ask yourself each morning, how do I make a difference today? And at night, ask yourself, did I do all that I could? And that's all any of us can do.
Shannon, thank you so much. And Holly, I think you know a lot about the longevity, the incessancy of what is required to make a difference in these fights. Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote has taken on very powerful groups and people. Can you tell us what sustained civic engagement actually looks like, especially for women who are balancing so much care, work, grief, just, day-to-day survival?
My answer may surprise some of you all. What sustains us is joy. What sustains us is hope.
Yeah.
What sustains us is understanding that we are enough. This year, we started with this idea, we call it Manifest 2026. And it is because we cannot live our lives just reacting and responding. We have to purposely and intentionally decide that we are going to do something. And so every day we do these, we share these manifest moments. Today's is from our sister Star Jones. She says, I am not too much. I am exactly enough. And I think in this moment, we are exactly enough, but it is not about us singularly. It is about us collectively. And where we are at our best and show up our best is when we are seeking to do something joyfully, when we are seeking to do something that cares for each other. Even in moments of great trauma and travesty and tragedy, coming together, there is solidarity that allows us to be intentional about how we are with each other. And I think the best thing about us coming together tonight isn't to make Renee Good a cause, isn't to print a t-shirt. And I'm not suggesting that any of those things are bad. But what's most important, and I love what this is named, Moms for Good. It speaks to our intentionality. It speaks to the fact that we recognize that there's a warm, fuzzy place for moms and that we are about the goodness. And most importantly, it highlights and validates our humanity. And when we see these stories happening, and I was on a call, a good friend of mine was on a call, and they were talking about the actions for ICE. And she said they did one of the most powerful things. They read the names of everyone who's been killed by ICE. That number is almost 100 people. So today is been triggered. Renee Good's life was a catalyst, but we do this for all of those lives. And it's so good and it feels good to be here with such amazing women and to do this in solidarity.
Reshma,
Yes.
you also have built movements. You have organized moms, caregivers, and you're also the daughter of refugees, which I'm sure you're thinking a lot about right now. Something you have talked a lot about is how women are taught to be brave at all costs.
Yes.
And many people here are probably feeling fear and grief, but also maybe some guilt for also feeling tired, maybe
Mm.
feeling like they need to step back for a moment. How do we hold all of this? How do we release the pressure to be strong at all costs, all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the pressure and part of that strategy to make us feel that way is to exhaust us. I think about how, for example, we just had this huge win in New York. We just won, childcare, path to universal childcare. Moms First was, part of leading that fight for the past 3 years. And you think about something so basic. How many moms every single day are having to choose between feeding their babies and funding their daycare, right? Between leaving their children at home so they can keep their job. How for so long in this country we have given women no choice, no options to keep them exhausted and vulnerable.
Mm.
And that in of itself is a strategy. And it wasn't until mom said, "Hell no," and you had a mom governor who had the power, like the mom governor in New Mexico, with a stroke of a pen to say, "We're going to change this." Did things change? So to Holly's point, there's a lot of hope and a lot of possibility out there, right? A lot of change that can happen because we have a lot of power. I just think that we have to figure out how to keep that joy, that love, that hope, that community, right? Like part of how we won this fight is we had moms constantly sharing their stories. You know what I mean? The cost of their daycare, what they were experiencing, making them understand that this is a strategy. You don't have to be a trad wife or a girl boss. We give you a binary to keep you oppressed. And it is that education, right, that we need because we think for so long that I'm just messing up here to the point of like what's happening in this country. Yes, I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents came here as refugees to watch what was happening in my hometown in Chicago, which is devastating, devastating, because this is an attack on brown people, on black people, on immigrants, on poor people. We have to be very, very clear about that. And what they have made us do over the past year is they've made us bear witness to their inhumanity so that we lose ours. I'm going to say
Hmm.
that again. They have made us bear witness to their inhumanity so we lose ours. They are trying to numb us. And that is a strategy. And so, what I have seen as an organizer and activist over the past year is this sense of complicity in
Hmm.
boards I'm in. I did a speech about immigration at a commencement speech. They turned off my mic. And so it is a tactic to keep us exhausted because here's the thing, and we have to keep talking about this. It is not easy to be brave. We think that when you do something brave, you feel like a superhero. No, you feel rejection. You feel
Mm.
exhaustion. You feel judgment. No one's given you a medal. And so when you feel that way, it doesn't encourage you to do brave acts, which is why we need to be clear and actually teach people how to be brave and, like as Shannon said, in their everyday life, and also
Mm.
be very clear that we don't romanticize it. Renee Good lost her life. She was executed for being brave. That was a strategy. That was a tactic. You just had a Fox News columnist write a story about the fact that there are organized gangs of wine moms out there.
I know. I
Last
know.
year it was cat ladies. This year it's us. So language, right?
Holly, can we
Again,
put that on a t-shirt? Holly, diluted wine mom gang?
Yeah,
I,
I'd
yes,
wear
you
it.
must. And send me one, please. 10. So my point is that I want us in these conversations to really understand and see the con, see the tactics, see the strategies that they've been using, and they've been using this for 100 plus years. And it is to make us be quiet and feel exhausted and be oppressed. And so we need to come together. We need to lift up the moments like we did last week in New York of wins with universal childcare. And we need to continue to figure out ways that we can come together and fight because there's more of us than there is of men.
Amen to that. So true. And I think that that's ultimately, we have to remember that's what they have to fear of us. And that is our power.
And they're
Um,
afraid.
yeah, exactly. Thus the wine mom gang name calling, which is just a riot. Okay, you all are so incredibly inspiring to me. And it's not only inspiring, there's something people in the chat are saying things like, oh my God, I feel so seen. So that is the power of what you all do for women. It's what you do for me. It's like we can really be ourselves and let this be a place tonight where everyone can feel that way and let's continue to show up for each other. Okay, so with that, Holly, Reshma, Shannon, I just want to say thank you. And please, please come back when we can all have longer conversations with this community together too. You all are
With
amazing
wine.
with
With
wine.
wine.
Got to. We're a wine mom gang. So thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next, I am going to be bringing up Kika Matos, who is the president of the National Immigration Law Center, and Nikki Marin Baena, who is co-director of Siembra, North Carolina. Nikki, this is the first time that I'm getting to meet you face to face, but thank you so much for working with Janice Robinson and the Red, Wine, and Blue team on the ground there in North Carolina. You all have just been doing such incredibly important work, and thank you for leading us. And Kika Matos, I can't even believe you're here. You lead the National Immigration Law Center. You are such an important and critical national leader in all moments, but especially in this moment. So thank you both for joining us. I want to ask you all, I sort of have the same questions for both of you, but sharing, sort of different perspectives. Kika from that national perspective, Nikki from who started a group, I believe, in 2017 on the ground to address the threats to the immigrant community in North Carolina. Um, in the wake of the latest federal actions, certainly not the first, these are continuous, but these actions that have deeply shaken the immigrant community, many people are experiencing real fear. I just love to know from both of you what you're hearing right now, how people are holding up, and how are they holding it's impossible not to feel that fear right now. And how are folks holding that at the same time with a determination to stay engaged? Um, Nikki, do you want to start from the local level in North Carolina?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see. Thank you for having me. And it's nice to see so many North Carolina people on this call. I'm a mom living, that's the cookie timer. So my name is Nikki Marimba and I'm co-director of Siembra NC. We're a Latino power building organization. And we started during the first Trump administration. A lot of our work is defending Latino immigrant communities and also Latino workers who experience wage theft and many other things. This past year has been really difficult. Like at different times, we've seen fear really take over people's lives, kids not going to school, people not going to work. Some of the, impacts of the week that Border Patrol really escalated their operations in North Carolina that don't get told is how many construction sites were empty, how many work sites were completely empty. And so a lot of the work that we do is really canvassing in neighborhoods. And so it's been really beautiful to see both Latino people with and without papers still canvassing in their communities so that
Wow.
people know what rights they have, so that people know what to do if they encounter an ICE operation, and so that people know that they can call our hotline here in North Carolina across the state if they have a loved one who is detained, and that we can support in different kinds of ways. And so that's some of what we're encountering here. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is also getting cities across North Carolina to pass Fourth Amendment workplace resolutions. And so what that means is that municipal employees get trained on how to uphold their Fourth Amendment violations. Because part of what I think is really important and is becoming clearer in moments like this one is that this government overreach and all of these violations don't just impact immigrants, they impact all of us. And
Yes.
so, and so we are so proud of seeing the different um, I'm seeing that people I'm a soft-spoken person. I'm gonna try and talk louder. But a lot of what we think is important for people to do across the country is get these Fourth Amendment resolutions passed so that municipal employees and cities know how to stand up, not just for immigrant communities, but also for themselves. Because first they come for certain groups of people, but ultimately
Yes.
these overreaches impact all of us.
Ugh, so true, Nikki. Kika, can you speak to that as well from your perspective?
Sure, of course. And I just want to acknowledge, much like Nikki, unfortunately, over the last year, I have had, since the beginning of this Trump administration, a front row seat to the horrors of what this government has unleashed on immigrants. And it has been nothing but brutal, notwithstanding watching the murder of a young mother in cold blood after dropping her child off to school filled me with such rage that I am struggling to channel that rage in the most constructive
Yeah.
of ways. But that is something that all of us have to do at this point in time. Pick up our rage, channel it, and move it in ways that will both support immigrants and protect our democracies. I also want to acknowledge the fact that right now in Minnesota, there are thousands of Black immigrants who are being hounded by ICE. This administration has sent thousands of ICE officers and asked them to target Somalis. So let us also hold them in our hearts and focus our support of folks in Minneapolis and the rest of Minnesota. Make sure we support them as well. Look, it's important to understand that Renee Good was ICE's last victim, but she was not the first. And let me just briefly share some statistics because I want to put this in some context. 32 people died in ICE detention last year, right? 4 other people died violently because of this administration's enforcement action. Renee Good was the last one, but she was not the first one. Over 500,000 people have been deported, and ICE has been complicit in their deportations. What the Trump administration has done is taken this government agency and transformed it into a tool of terror. ICE raids homes, ICE separates families, ICE kills people, ICE targets and disappears workers and parents and neighbors, people who have lived amongst us for decades, people who contribute, who love, and who belong. I also want to remind us that what we are seeing is a slide into authoritarianism. This administration has used immigrants to begin their authoritarian bent. They have begun with immigrants, but they won't end with immigrants. And Renee's murder is a reminder of that. They have begun to expand their net. And that is why all of us have to be involved. I want to remind us when masked agents can snatch people from their homes or workplaces without accountability, when due process is treated as optional, when cruelty is celebrated as policy, authoritarianism has arrived, and it is up to we, the people, to step up and fight.
Kika and Nikki, I want to ask you both, um, what is your advice for what does the immigrant community need most right now? From allies who want to stand up to harmful federal actions without centering ourselves to build collective power. We know that we are most effective when we follow the lead of those who are most impacted. Nikki, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think, like Kika said, this is about a broader pattern that we're beginning to see. And I think one of the things that's really important to note is that the because of the big budget bill, ICE's budget to do what they are doing just got a lot bigger, a lot bigger. And this is something where everyone can take action in your community. So it's not just about sending letters to Congress, although if you're represented, like we all should be sending letters to our representatives and calling our representatives about it. But it's also going to our county commission meetings because they're really who are about to have to face uh, the dilemma of how to make up for these budget cuts that are coming from the federal level. And so helping our local elected officials stand up and say, no, we also don't support this big budget bill. We don't support all of this money that got cut from programs that help our people like SNAP and Medicare, uh, basically got moved to the ICE budget. And that's wrong and that's concerning, especially after what just happened. And so people going to their county commission meetings and saying, hey, what are you going to do about this is really important. Fourth Amendment resolutions are really important. And like basically anything that we can do to get local elected officials, county commissions, state legislators to say we're not up for this is
Yeah.
really important in this moment.
Thank you, Nikki. Kika, what would you add?
Yeah, I would just add a couple more things. One is do not be silent. Go to rallies, step up, speak out, buy a whistle, and whenever you see ICE in your neighborhood, blow it 3 times to make sure that everybody knows what's happening. If you see a raid happening, blow that whistle, one long blow, and that indicates to people who are vulnerable that they need to protect themselves. Show up for your immigrant neighbors, do accompaniment, find your local immigrant rights organization and volunteer. Call on your elected officials and demand an end to detention, deportation, and terror. And let me just quickly say that right now, Congress is negotiating a funding bill. And it has the possibility of providing billions more in funding for this out of control machinery. So I'm asking all of you, please, tomorrow, take time to reach out to your representative and encourage them to block this funding. We have you can do this by going to nilc.org/stopdhs. Again, nilc.org/stopdhs. Be active, and I will encourage us to please let us honor the victims, not with our grief alone, but with our actions. Let us fight harder, be louder, and do this together.
Thank you, Kika. Thank you, Nikki. We so appreciate your leadership. Please call on us. We will keep following your lead, and we're in this together. Thank you so much for your leadership and for being here tonight. Next, we are going to bring on Andrew McCabe, who is the former FBI director. I think that many of you have heard of Andy McCabe, and we are thrilled that he is joining us actually from out of the country tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. The reason why we wanted to have you on is because with all the disinformation and the different videos and all the angles and everything that's happening in our social media feeds, this feeling of really being gaslit, we wanted to just have an authoritative law enforcement voice come on and level set with us about what happened on that neighborhood street in Minneapolis when Renee Good was shot. So, Andrew, you joined the FBI in 1996. You served as both deputy and acting director until the Trump administration fired you in 2018. Given what we've seen so far in the fatal shooting of Renee Good, what is your evaluation of the use of lethal force in this incident?
Thank you, Katie. First, thanks for having me. It's truly an honor to be here to get the opportunity to speak to so many people who feel deeply about their communities, about their safety, about their rights, and about the rule of law, which, what we're talking about tonight is just a horrible example of none of that, actually. So the shooting in Minnesota, to really anyone from a law enforcement background who's been through an academy, who spent time working as a federal agent, as I did for over 20 years, or as a police officer, could look at this, take it out of its current context. They could look at this situation, and it's like a perfect example of a horrendous lack of adherence to safety tactics. And escalating rather than de-escalating a situation into what appears to be an absolutely pointless killing. So if just to walk through it very quickly. So the first from many of the videos we've seen, the first kind of interaction that you have between the officer who ultimately commits the shooting and Renee is as he's approaching her car. The thing that jumps out to me there is she has her window down. She is turned to engage him. He's talking to her. He never tells her to get out of the car. He doesn't appear to be at any sort of a heightened state of alert. He doesn't appear to be considering her a threat in any way. He then kind of loops around the car. He starts at the front, goes to the other side, and comes to the back. He engages with Katie's wife. They start videotaping each other. At that point, he comes back to the front of the car, and the second officer is then actively engaged in trying to get Renee out of the vehicle, and that's when he makes the first shot. That moment is really what it all comes down to. In law enforcement, you're taught in the academy that you never draw your weapon, you never initiate lethal force unless you reasonably believe that your life or the life of someone else is in danger, or you're in danger of suffering some sort of serious physical injury. None of that is present in this case. And in fact, what jumps out to me is the officer could have at any second just stepped out of the way rather than escalating to a lethal use of force. Then he, in fact, does exactly that, avoids the forward motion of the vehicle, and then, of course, takes advantage of that opportunity to shoot at her from the side of the car. It's an inexplicable engagement. As I said, I think it's indicative of a lack of adherence to training standards, and essentially an absolutely abysmal handling of the situation. Now, having said all that, I have to say that in this country, the standard for holding someone criminally responsible for use of force, a police officer, somebody what we call acting under the color of law, is incredibly low. The standard is what that police officer thought with the facts that he had in the moment, according to his subjective experience, and whether or not that all comes out to a reasonable belief that he was in danger. So the state of the current investigation is really not particularly good. But even if this case went forward to a grand jury and ultimately to a trial, cases like these against officers are very, very hard to make.
So, Andy, that's really unsettling, right? And when we think about, okay, well, what do we do? And this is the current state of how law enforcement is engaging with citizens right now. What advice do you have for women, for anyone in our communities who are organizing around these issues? And how can everyday citizens who want to challenge these authorities demand fairness, even when it feels like these institutions are stacked against us?
There's many ways to do that, Katie, as several of your guests have already talked about this evening, so I won't repeat that. Those steps are all so important, to tap into your own power, your own ability to attack this problem from the channel and the direction that is most comfortable to you. If you have connections to your local politicians, things like that, exercise those. If the right thing for you is to get out and exercise your First Amendment rights in protest, do that. Absolutely do that. It's all incredibly important to the survival of our political life as Americans that people engage in First Amendment protected political speech. Continue to do that even while the pressure is on to quell those voices. So I would say absolutely continue doing all those things that we see happening across the country. But, and I have to add this because I worry about people who go out on the street and are bold in their expression of their own political beliefs. This is an unbelievably heightened environment. This is a time of great risk. So use your voice. Go out, draw attention to the people acting and doing things on your street. Blow the whistles. If you want to follow people around, you can follow someone around. But once you take that step to actually engage with that ICE officer, that police officer, that federal agent, whoever it might be, that's the point at which you start taking on serious personal risk. If you act in a way that can be interpreted as impacting or trying to stop the officers from conducting their law, exercising their lawful authority, that's when you put yourself at risk legally. But as we have seen all too violently recently, physically. We know that many of these officers are not going to hold back in any way, that you will be treated as harshly as they possibly can. And so I worry about pushing people to be too aggressive in the exercise of those First Amendment rights. I mean, that's a line that everybody has to really kind of think about and decide for themselves. But consider that when you get involved directly with these agents, you are really taking things up a notch to a place that you may not be able to control.
It's such an important reminder, Andy. And we're going to be hearing from women who have been organizing in their communities, who have been putting their bodies into these spaces, and everyone does have to find what is right for them. But no matter what those choices are, we do have to be mindful of our safety. And that's why I'm grateful that we have Tisha from the Democracy Security Project, who will be joining us tonight to talk about how we do stay safe as we take necessary action. Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, for just affirming that what we see with our eyes is what we see and that it's not okay. And the reminder, of course, to stay safe out there. So thank you so much for joining us. Next, I am so thrilled to bring on Jessica Yellen. She is the founder of News, Not Noise. And she is a former CNN chief, White House correspondent, and she's my go-to for, especially in these moments of just complete media chaos, doing exactly what the name of her company says it does, is separate the news from the noise. We just thought it was I don't know the last overwhelming moment like this. I mean, overall the news is overwhelming, It's been a while now, for the last decade, but there is a velocity we are all experiencing right now that is incredibly overwhelming. We are seeing intentional misinformation coming not just from right-wing news sources online, but spreading quickly about this shooting. It's being used right now to protect powerful institutions and really silence public outrage. From your perspective, how is disinformation being used right now? How do we need to be aware of this as we navigate the media environment?
Thank you for that question. And also, just a moment to thank you for this gathering and everyone here, and Andy McCabe for just modeling what integrity in law enforcement looks like, reminding us it can exist. So I think it's helpful to kind of take a moment and frame what's happening here, which is the administration is taking a new step forward in a way we haven't seen with as much determination and organized work to create sort of a dual state system where one set of laws applies to us, the ordinary citizens, and it is enforced with incredible rigor over the smallest infractions, but it is used as a shield to the state and to their agents. So that the same law that can get Renee Good killed with absolute immunity, which Vance asserted without any basis and isn't a real thing, can be used to protect somebody who shoots her, as Andy McCabe has said, without cause. So in service of that, and in service of making us all confused and giving them and their agents the space to do what they want recklessly on our streets, there's a organized effort to put out a lot of misleading information about what's going on. And I think it's really helpful for folks to know that sometimes when you're seeing folks arguing with you online, or if you know people who are saying, Renee Good deserved it or got it because she walked into it, there is a possibility they are getting such radically different information from you that they are not terrible human beings, but they have a completely different set of facts. And so some of the misinformation and disinformation that's out there, none of which at this stage would obviously justify what this agent did, but include things that would tarnish her reputation, like false allegations that she abused her kids and that's why they don't live with her, false allegations that she celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, allegations that the videos we all are seeing were doctored and that the important part was edited out. There's even a series of videos going around that says that person in the video we saw where she said, "Hey, dude, I'm not mad at you," that's not the real face. The real face is this other woman, and they have all these videos of this other woman being screaming and being extremely confrontational, doing other things. Why do I bring all this up? Because A, if you think that people who aren't agreeing with you might have different facts, it helps you enter into a conversation with them. And B, it gives you a sense of what we're up against. And I think it's important to know that, and I'll stop after this, is that when you are on social media sharing videos, even I worked in this business 25 years. I can't with my own eyes tell what's AI and what's not. And some things online right now look 100% real to me and are not. And I will tell you, this is one instance in which it is important to wait for the legacy news institutions to verify video, because only they can afford the very expensive software that exists to check if video is AI and let us know. So I get tips from my audience I sometimes can't use, and I wait for the folks with the big software to confirm it. That's the scary new world we're living in today. And so that's just one little strategy for you to wait and know if something is real or not. If you're like, why aren't they putting out this video? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
They're checking it.
One more reason why I trust you and not so many other places. Okay. Anti-authoritarian experts that I have been listening to for a while now have talked a lot about the importance of defections, basically from the MAGA movement. In order for an authoritarian regime to be toppled, we need these defections. And from what I understand, at moments like this, where a story can break through the filter bubbles of some people who might have different news feeds than I do, especially when there is violence that can be very horrifying, that these are inflection points where there actually can be a moment where former, where Trump voters it can trigger buyer's remorse. We're seeing that now. It is understandable for those who did not vote for this to feel scorned, to feel like you brought this on us. I do not forgive you, etc. But as the experts advise, there is something important happening right here that we also do have to find a way to grow our movement. Can you share your thoughts on why this is so important? Because I feel like it relates to what you're saying right now about these different news feeds we get.
Well, personally, one of the reasons I do what I do is because I believe in coalition, and that you don't have to agree with somebody on all the things in order to fight with them for the key thing you're working on now, right? And now it's our collective safety, the defense of democracy, rule of law, et cetera. Um, so the strategies in this situation are, when you find somebody you're talking to who is asserting something that's untrue and you know it, if you tell them they are wrong, there is a lot of research and science around this. If you tell them they are wrong, they defend. If you ask provocative questions, they will still defend in the moment, but they might walk away with the question in their head. And they keep turning it over time. And then you can send them follow-up material that opens the question further. So for example, if this ICE agent was following the law and everything was on the up and up, why did the FBI take the investigation away from the local law enforcement? That's just like not done. That's weird. Why is that happening if they have nothing to hide? Huh? Why? So that's just one question. Who does
Yep.
this serve? And then being able to provide the checked information, the checked video in an ongoing conversation. The goal is to let them decide in their own head something doesn't add up. You do not end up convincing them in the moment. And I can tell you, I know this because I have these arguments with people all day on social media, and it can work, but it's an over the long horizon
Yep.
engagement. It's not one interaction reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jessica, thank you. You're going to have to come back too. We've got so much more to cover here. Do you want to pause the chat right now for another opportunity to take action? This is an opportunity to sign up for something if you're interested. We are holding what is called a social bank on Wednesday night. You do need to have an Instagram account. And listen to what this is for a moment. A social bank is a collective digital action. Hundreds of people coming together online to like, comment, share, and amplify key posts around a critical issue. This can be an effective tactic to use in engaging on social media in moments of extreme disinformation. It's also a way to take advantage of what Jessica and I were talking about, of this critical juncture to actually invite in disillusioned Trump voters, those who are feeling like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm not okay with this violence. And no, it's not a one and done interaction, but by us all working together and doing this over time, studies have shown that this can have an impact. So if this is something that feels like, hey, maybe that's something I could do, I would be interested in that. We are going to be partnering with our friends at the 3.5% campaign for a Moms for Good social bank. It's going to be Wednesday night. We've just dropped a link in the chat. If you are interested in signing up for that, please do. It's just one more way of engaging in a productive way that we really do need folks to join us. And again, you do need for this one, we may be doing others where we engage on Facebook, but for this one, we're going to be focusing on Instagram. So you need an Instagram account to be able to help out. Okay. And you will be trained and all that will be provided. Okay. So thank you again to Jessica Yellen for joining us. Now I am really excited to bring on some moms from across the country, both in Minneapolis and Chicago and some other places who have been organizing on the ground to stand up for their neighbors, to stand up to ICE. So let's get into it. Stephanie, Sarah, Nikki, Jenny, Ashley. Stephanie, I'm actually going to start with you. You help lead a Trouble Nation group, which is part of the Red, White, and Blue network of local groups outside of Minneapolis. And you have been engaged in tracking ICE for a while now. And your group has also taken action, as I understand it, to prevent your local jail from becoming an ICE detention center. Tell us what you've been doing.
Thank you so much for having me here. So I just want to just piggyback off the protest thing. And the other benefit of protest is that you meet a lot of really, really good people. And we have once a week, we have been doing that a couple of women, like less than a year ago, started this, and we have grown. I was the first time I was happy that I couldn't find a parking spot at the last one because it was so packed. So it was wonderful.
Wow.
But because of that, we have people within that community that they knew that the sheriff was going to look at using our county jail or our jail as an ICE detention center. So they then came into our group and said, hey, we need you to sign a petition. Can you come to our local coffee shop from this time and we'll have it there for you to sign? They had us email our county commissioners, hey, what's going on? They met with the sheriff. They then also asked us to like I said, sign petitions and go to the actual county commissioner meetings, and they packed the room. They actually had to have them in another room with the TV going because it was so packed. And the day before Renee's murder, the sheriff came out and said, we are not going to be putting an ICE detention center in our jail. So it is because of a bunch of amazing women in our community. Another thing, Unidos, Minnesota has been doing a lot of these upstander trainings, and the next one after her murder, they have this packed. They can't, it's reached capacity. So people up here are stepping up. You had mentioned that I am doing some of these. I just meant to talk to Sarah and Nikki before this, thanking them because Chicago has shared some really good information with us also around upstander training or response. And so I'll just share a little briefly what's been happening. Yesterday, I went out on a rapid response, and we were basically we escort people who are maybe coming home from church if they're concerned about doing that. But we also want to go to places where we think ICE is going to be active and where we can then be recording and doing whatever we can. Well, yesterday I was following, we're talking, and they were taking us out into this rural area. It was another woman, myself, and two ICE cars. And all of a sudden my colleague was going, they're going to my house. This is in rural Minnesota. They were out in the country. It was just me and her and these other ICE detention center. And sure enough, they stopped right in front of her house. And she was like, and I'm just like in shock. I mean, and so I said to her, if you want to come stay at my house tonight, you can. To which she said, no, I'm not going to let them intimidate me. I mean, I would have had my bag packed and I would have been there. There's no way that I would have been there, but she chose to do that. And today she said that they would have been following her today as well. So, I mean, this is real. Another situation was they were stopping people right in the road. We were there and we were taking pictures. And the bravery, two Latino men were there also doing this. And I'm thinking, You have the most chances of this being you, and yet you're here fighting. And another woman, the day after she was murdered, after Renee was murdered, she told me that she was going into her family's in neighborhoods, and ICE was there, and she was telling them, get out. And she was doing the whistle, she was doing the bells and all of that. And I'm like, she wasn't, there was no fear in her eyes. It was all fire. She was there and she was not going to let them take her family. So I'm really impressed with that. We also have some actions going around. I know like Target is in Minnesota. That's our corporate. So we have some actions going on around now, but we want people to contact them. And we're asking specifically, what are you doing? And then we are going to go and say, but we want you to do this. And particularly, we want you to help get ICE out of Minnesota. And just last but not least, I want to share yesterday as I was working and organizing all this stuff, my husband goes, look at that bald eagle out in their backyard. And I just stopped for a while and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, great. Then I get in my car and I'm organizing, but I'm also getting ready to go on the rapid reef. And yesterday was a sunny day in Minnesota. It was beautiful. We've had a cloudy time. And all of a sudden I see a bald eagle flying over my car. And all I can sit there thinking is that we used to be the land of the free. We're not anymore, but we are home of the brave. And all of these people who are doing this, that bald eagle reminded me, we are the home of the brave. And I thank each and every one of you for doing what you're doing. And there are so many brave people in our community, and I'm just really impressed.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You.
I want to go to Reverend Ashley Harness Jimenez next because I think that you told me that your kid needs to go to bed at 8 o'clock, and we're respecting all the mom schedules here. Okay,
Oh my
so
gosh, thank you for understanding.
I mean, do I understand? Yes, I do. All right, so
Yes.
you are in Minneapolis. You have been a part of vigils with faith leaders happening on the ground and all the organizing. I understand thousands of parents are helping walk kids to school, in daycare centers. Can you just give us a glimpse of what's going on in the heart of Minneapolis?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, I'm a mom of a 5 and 8 year old, and I just have to say that's where all my pastoring skills come from. That's where all of my self-regulation skills come from. And it's really parenting, I think, is the best training ground for the world we live in right now, which means we all can do this. We can all show up in just one step further outside of our comfort zone. So last Wednesday morning, I was at work, I was at church, and I was heading into a meeting when my phone started blowing up. My friend who lives a block away from where we went sent a message to local clergy that have been working together for over a decade on all kinds of justice issues, saying that a legal observer had been shot. They didn't know what was happening yet, and they needed immediate, at least less anxious than everyone else presence to show up. Those of us who are moms, those of us who are pastors, we know how to show up and at least look less anxious than other people around us. And when we arrived, there were hundreds of law enforcement officers from state and federal agencies, like so many that I couldn't count them all. And there was a relatively small crowd of observers at that point, and I would say they had this just terrified look on their face. All of them. They had witnessed what I would call as a pastor crucifixion. They had witnessed death by the state. And so those of us who were pastors wore these hats to make ourselves visible, just moving through the crowd in pairs, offering mom love, beaming out mom love, so to speak, just being present to the absolutely overwhelming emotion that was there. And I have to say, I've spent over a decade organizing around police violence in particular, because Minneapolis is Minneapolis. And I've stood literally inches away from the face of local cops in full on riot gear in what felt like a little kid staring contest. But I was trying to beam love back at them in that gear as Black Lives Matter organizers were doing the work that they needed to do behind me. And I have to say, in retrospect, I felt really safe compared to what's happening now. We had police liaisons, we had negotiations happening constantly. I've never seen anything like what we're seeing here with ICE in all of that time. there's no visible chain of command. There's no negotiating with them. There's no de-escalating. There's no approaching them in humanity in the way that those of us who've been doing this for a while are trained to do. And seemingly out of nowhere, they'd be all in this bunch, and then just a few of them would erratically erupt into the crowd and attack somebody, physically attack somebody, bringing them to the ground, shooting them at close range with chemical agents, threatening other forms of fire, which they had physically. And you know, it was legitimately terrifying. But you've seen all of these stories. You've seen the stories about the terror that's happening, and I want to say that it's real. The fear in particular that our Black and brown neighbors are feeling in their bodies every day when they aren't feeling like they can go to work is real. But what I want to tell you about is that this is not the only story happening here. You're not seeing what has grown strong in Minneapolis again, which is the neighborhood networks of love in action, or what I like to call the mom networks. It's just that they're writ large here. You don't see on the news the big and long hugs of people who have either known each other for decades doing this work or people who have never met each other and just know that hugs of 8 seconds or longer regulate a nervous system, and we need them on the front lines. You don't see the observer who had this big, huge rainbow flag of a fan who figured out how to make it into a very loud noise to signal ice and who brought out laughter and joy from the crowd. You don't see the old man who was chipping ice off of his sidewalk at the memorial site so that protesters who were kind of boxed in through police tape had room to move and felt safe. You don't see the legal observers who were literally helping news crews over snow mounds or ice mounds or sledding in, donating their sleds to each other to bring people and gear to the site. You don't see the people who were making spinach pie for all of the neighbors so that they could come inside somewhere warm. You don't see the Somali community organizers. And let me tell you, these are the people who have been front and center of so many of these attacks. And the mothers, the Somali aunties and mothers and grandmothers came out in droves that day and for days after with hot, sweet black tea and with homemade samosas and passed them through the crowd for everyone. And I mean everyone, like local police officers, the neighbors in the area, the observers. This is the community who is under fierce attack right now. And they were teaching us through their mothering what grace and dignity and care look like. I just want you to know that there's fear mongering on all sides right now. And don't let that fear stop you from showing up because there is so much joy and love present, even at those, I have my whistle here. Even when we show up to witness ICE, there is joy and love in being a good neighbor, in being the helpers, as Mr. Rogers said. And I want to just encourage you, if you have a faith community, reach out to your clergy there. Ask them what they are doing to shelter undocumented folks. There is a long tradition in this country of communities of faith sheltering people who are in distress and in need and undocumented. We shelter families in our community. You can do this. There are people who can teach you. Get to know your neighbors, like have an actual potluck on your block, because these are the people who can bring you food or who you can bring food to, who can pick up your kid or whose kid you can pick up. Find out what vulnerabilities you have now as a block so that you can care for each other when ICE shows up, because they will show up. We are here, we have lessons to teach you, and we want you to know that you can do this if you prepare and if you take just the next step out of your comfort zone. Use your mom skills, use your regulation, use the ways that you have learned to care for your small humans, and those are the skills you need.
That's so beautiful, Ashley. Thank you so much. And go do the bedtime with those mom skills. And that was so inspiring to know that we have all the tools we need.
Absolutely. Take
Yeah.
care of yourselves and each other, beloveds.
Thank you. Sarah and Nikki. You all made headlines because you were two of the 14 suburban moms in outside of Chicago who got arrested for protesting outside of an ICE detention center. Tell us what happened, ladies.
Thanks
And
for
I love
having
that
me.
you're reporting from a public library. Like,
That's right. But our houses are not quiet right now.
okay.
This is, um, so we were in September when ICE and all the activity really picked up big time in our communities. Everybody around us was feeling like, what is going on? How are they able to do this? Our neighbors who maybe have other types of citizenship or are in the process of things, we're starting to really question, is this a safe place for me? People at our school. So this was like directly in our community. And then we were watching on the news, other things happening. We generally felt like me just talking to moms at school pickup, like, what can we do? People started doing a lot of mutual aid things. And then I started bringing moms to the protest at the Broadview facility, kind of showing people where to park and all of that. And so we said, what can we do that would make a bigger impact? We were seeing in the facility, which is supposed to just be a processing facility. It's not supposed to keep people for more than 12 hours, but they were. And so the really inhumane conditions. There were problems with people getting enough water. They had the lights on all the time. There were not proper facilities for people to sleep, bathroom, shower. There were reports of there being so many people in a cell that they could not sit down or lay down to sleep, which as a student of history in the world, like, where have we heard that before? If you've read any books about the Holocaust, I was in Auschwitz in 2007 and had the tour where they said on these train cars were so full, people could not sit down or sleep. And so we just started to question as mom, well, I mean, we are moms, whatever, but any human, not to gender it too much, but what side of history do we want to be on? We've seen this happen before. And so we kind of just started organizing by word of mouth, texting, like an old-fashioned phone tree, like, who is interested, who wants to do a little more than like donating extra food, or which is all really important, but like um, so I guess we started asking questions. I said, I think we'll like find somebody who's already doing this, and then we'll meet up with them and join. And then I kept not finding somebody, and I kept finding people who would answer my questions on how can we do civil disobedience um, in this way to bring more attention to what was going on in Chicago, because a lot of people were not understanding that didn't live here and weren't seeing these
Yeah.
things on the street. So.
It's so incredible that I understand the first night you had 15 people show up, and then the next time it was 50, and that is what we see again and again. So I guarantee any one of you hearing these stories and thinking, "Oh, well, I couldn't do that where I live," you can. You are not alone, no matter where you live. And thank you so much, Sarah and Nikki, who also, you all were not really like friends before this.
No.
Now you're hanging out on weeknights at the public library together.
Yeah, exactly.
Thousands of people. Like, how fun is that? Okay.
Mhm.
Jenny, I want to get to you as well. You help lead a Chamber of Mothers group in Minnesota, and your group is doing a lot of support of immigrant communities through mutual aid, including food drives for families. Can you tell us about this? I heard ICE even came to your daycare already. What's going on
Yeah.
for you all?
Thank you for allowing me to be here. So I am representing Chamber of Mothers, and that is a nonpartisan nonprofit built by moms who are fed up and fired up. We focus on three key pillars: paid leave, affordable childcare, and maternal health. However, for this year, we've really found ourselves talking and focusing a lot on gun violence and now immigration topics, which aren't really in our pillar, but obviously intersect with everything that we support. Um, I'm one of the leaders of our Minnesota chapter, and we are relatively new, a new chapter, a new organization. Many of our leadership and members are new to advocacy. So, this kind of message of showing up where you are, we're kind of starting to take these baby steps and figuring out, where our place is in this. And really, what our Minnesota chapter has provided is an invaluable network of moms who just get it and are anchored together. We're in community as we're kind of navigating this chaos together. And so we really try to respond as quickly as possible to get action items out to our mailing list of over 200 plus moms in the state of Minnesota, most local here in the Twin Cities. And we really try to pair that in big, medium, and little asks so that we can give people here's how, the big things showing up at the protest, being on the front lines, those medium things that maybe take a little bit more time if you can squeeze it in between work and nap and bedtime and all the things that we're doing as moms. And then also just the little asks of taking care of yourself. We usually send some meditations, remind moms to focus on self-care, take a breath. But like you said, I had ICE or federal agents. They actually were with Department of Homeland Security, but they showed up at my daycare and I learned about it 2 days after the fact, just through popping into my director's office with donuts as a, act of service. And that spurred me to ask a lot of questions about where my child is all day. What is the protocol? Why didn't they communicate that? And because it was just the center director being questioned and it didn't escalate and they didn't enter the facility, they didn't think that parents needed to be communicated to. So we used that as the questions that I asked of my center and that staff and the protocol that I wanted to see as a parent. We've provided scripts to our members to really just think about, where are you going every day? Are those places prepared? Because like I said, many of us are in Minneapolis. I'm one city out from Minneapolis, and it's happened so fast. And so if ICE is not where you are yet, it doesn't mean they're not coming. So as moms, ask those questions, be that nosy mom. And that's kind of how we're encouraging our members to show up. And then also from a mutual aid standpoint, we're really encouraging everybody to just plug into those places again that you are every day. What does your daycare center need? What does your school need? How can you facilitate those relationships that the schools already have with the communities that are impacted if you don't directly know people? And we've really seen a lot of success getting people engaged that way. And really, ultimately, at the end of the day, we also remind our members that if they don't have the capacity because they are raising kids and they're in the throes of motherhood, that mothering is a form of resistance. Raising kind, compassionate, loving humans is more than enough for them to do. And the fact that they're following us and they're aware is also very important.
Thank you for that reminder, Jenny. That's beautiful. Thank you all. And what I want to say and what our call to action right now is before we get to our final two really important segments on safety and on our mental health, you all, if you want to find other amazing moms like these women on the screen where you live, you can. Okay. So get involved with one of our partner groups. Jenny is with Chamber of Mothers. They have other chapters in other places across the country. Mothers Out Front also does. Mother Forward is another one of our partners. Follow them on social media. And what I also want to do is invite you all, if you can't find one of these groups that is near you, you might be able to find a Red, Wine, and Blue Troubled Nation group near you. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 groups all across the country. If there isn't one yet that's convenient to you, we can help you start one, and you won't be alone for long. We'll help you find other people who are in our network. We have over 500,000 women in the network. There's always someone else who lives near you. So, like I said, I guarantee you, no matter where you live, you are not alone. And if you want to see if there's a Troubled Nation group or to join or to start, check out that link that we have paused the chat again. You can click through, put in your zip code or your town, and check out the map. And we would love to help you in that way. And again, after tonight's event, if you want to stay on even longer because you're just loving being with this amazing community tonight, Missy is going to walk folks through how to do that. Thank you all, amazing women. I can't wait to continue to be in touch with all of you. You've inspired so many people tonight. Thank you. You're incredible. Okay. Tisha Garrett, thank you for your patience. The Democracy Security Project is an absolutely essential resource to the movement of organizations that are doing this work day in and day out to stand up for our neighbors, for all of our rights, and for each other. Tisha, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go off the screen because I understand you have a couple of slides, but Tisha is here because I think a lot of people may be feeling like, I want to do this too, but Andy McCabe told us we need to stay safe. So you're going to give us a taste of what that looks like. Over to you.
Some of what have already been said, other folks have talked about tonight, but what we do at Democracy Security Project is we want to make sure that you all are safe. That when you're going out to express your First Amendment rights, you're really thinking about all the things you can and will do to keep yourself safe. And we also want to be a resource for you out here in the world. So we also have some contact information that if, as you're out there organizing, as you have questions, reach out to us. We're here to be supportive. So let's talk about it. You're going out to protest. What should you be thinking about in order to keep yourself safe, your community safe, your people safe? Dress for the event. If it is going to be 80 degrees, do not wear a snow parka. If it's going to be 30 degrees, think twice about shorts. The thing that will get you probably before law enforcement is heat or cold. So be thoughtful about what you're going to wear out there. Wear the right shoes, always important, especially for us ladies. Travel in groups when possible. I think someone already said this today on this call, which is protest people are the nicest people. So even if you want to go out on your own, make friends. Because in the event that law enforcement or someone that there is some sort of disturbance at the event, you want to have a core group of people that you can kind of make a plan with and stick with. Being thoughtful about posting your location in real time. One, it can be a tip off to law enforcement if you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to be here." And the second part of this is that, you know, there is metadata, which is like location data, information about you, where you are, that's attached to photos when you, as long as you are using your location services on your phone and on your camera. When you post that, you are posting exactly to like a map point where you are at any point in time. And so you're giving away your location and making yourself a little bit more unsafe. So if you want to take pictures, if you want to inspire people to get into action, either post before, say, "Hey, I'm going to be headed to this protest. I want you to come join me," or posting after, "Hey, I did this really inspiring thing. Reach out to me. I want you to come with me next time." Being thoughtful about how you're going to use your social engagement to keep yourself safe. Using encrypted communications, especially if you are a part of the organizing team for a protest, making sure that you are using something that is end-to-end encryption. We suggest that you use Signal. There also WhatsApp is out there. WhatsApp, though, also owned by a large company that maybe you don't want to have access to your data. Um, Something we say at Democracy Security Project all the time is safety is personal. You get to make choices for yourself. What is safe for me may not be safe for Katie. And so you get to make those decisions for yourself. Know your rights. I'm going to point you to my friends at the ACLU who do excellent know your rights trainings on things. I know that some of that Red, Wine, and Blue has done some of those trainings for folks. But being aware of what are your rights and also what are your rights in your locale. So if you are in an open carry state, you want to make sure that you have a plan for what happens if firearms do show up at your protest, because that's a real possibility. So being thoughtful about that sort of thing. And then practice de-escalation. We know that a lot of times we've heard, even this evening, that federal agents, law enforcement haven't been the best at de-escalating situations. But we can be there to de-escalate for the people in our group. What does that look like? So I want you all, if you can, to practice with me for a second. So first, I want you to sit up, raise yourself up a little bit higher. When you are going to be in a situation, you want to make sure that you're using your entire height. I want you to take 3 breaths with me, in and out. Just and you're going to take that next breath, and I'm going to keep talking. But what's that one? Why are you breathing? Because you want to make sure that you're getting oxygen to your brain so that you're actually thinking. So you want to make sure that you continue to think, and thinking clearly. Um, then what are you going to do when you're actually one of the biggest things to remember in de-escalation is know when to walk away. Know when you are feeling so unsafe that you don't feel like you can escalate and that you're just going to turn and walk away. A lot of times when people are showing up to events, what they want to do is they want to make sure that they are disrupting the event. They don't want you to go on. They don't want you to talk about what's going on in your community and what's making you upset. So if you have other volunteers, if you like, this is not the time to turn and look at the disruptor. You want to make sure that you're ignoring them, honestly, and that you are not having folks who are screaming at them. Just don't give them the time of the day. You're here for another purpose, and focusing on that purpose. Um, the other thing that I would say is you're also going to think about yes catching. And what do I say? What do I mean? Those of us who have raised children or parents, I like to say, have had this conversation where you have been like, I know you were upset about this. I recognize that that us in this group here, is distressing for you. I hear your concerns. You want to turn on to that voice that's like, I am hearing you. You don't necessarily want to agree with the statements, but you just want to say, like, I am listening to you. I am hearing you. And making sure that you have an appointed person who is your de-escalator. If you have a friend who, if a situation's already on 10 and they go up to 12, that is not your de-escalator. You want to have someone who can make sure that they are bringing the temperature down. Okay, let's go to the next slide very quickly because let's talk about what it's like to be an active bystander. This is when law enforcement is present. What do we want you to think about? And so many people have said this tonight. You have to ensure your own safety. You have to make sure that you can still be there to be a good witness. Um, Maintain distance between you and law enforcement. You are observing the situation, and you do have the right to record as long as you are on public sidewalks. If you are on private property where the owner um, has given you permission, you have the right to record law enforcement. They will tell you you don't, but you do. Remind the person who is being detained of their rights. This is why having the know your rights piece is important, making sure that you get their name, reminding them, if you have the name of like of a local bail bond, sort of numbers that you can shout out to people who may need that sort of information. So keeping that sort of stuff handy. And then if you feel comfortable sharing your photos, your video with local law enforcement, with local media, and with other advocacy groups who are monitoring the situation. This is a really important time for you to find out who are the organizations in your community who are doing the organizing, who are the people who are helping families to find people who have been detained. all of this work is happening in your neighborhoods. It definitely is. And it's incumbent on you to go out and find that information. Um, so those are the things that I would say in quick succession. On the next slide, if we can pop that up. At Democracy Security Project, we do physical safety training. We talk about events and protests, cyber safety and privacy. We have a lot of resources on our website. On the next slide, we have a QR code. If you go and visit the site, we have a resource page with lots of one-page resources. And feel free to reach out to us. So, Katie, I will toss it back to you.
Tisha, that was just essential. Thank you so, so much for being with us tonight. I just couldn't have imagined doing this. It makes me feel more secure with that information. And you all are an incredible resource we will continue to be in touch with. Okay, y'all, I promised that we were going to address our mental health needs directly tonight. Now, this isn't the first time. Some of you will have met my mom. Her name is Dr. Stephanie Citron, and she is a veteran clinical psychologist. I don't know how many decades, Mom. You've been doing this since I was very small. Yeah. um, and Dr. Citron specializes in helping people deal with all kinds of trauma, whether that is a natural disaster in their lives or experiencing the shooting of Renee Good. And so, Mom, of course, we got requests for me to call my mom. So thanks for being there. Moms for Good. We're both moms for good here tonight.
We
so
are moms for good. We are.
I'm going to let you take the lead here because
Okay.
I think you know what we need. We've been talking about this.
Okay. So I think that we have gotten so much information tonight about all the things that are available to support us as activists and the chaos that is out there. And we are living in a chaotic world right now, where we can't count on protection from the law enforcement or anything out there. We just don't know. It's not predictable. The only thing that we have any sure control over is ourselves, right? And so I know Tisha's been talking about ways to de-escalate ourselves. And the thing that I just want to say is I think that there's two parts here. The whole situation out there is one that is creating a tremendous amount of fear and terror and anger and rage. And I think that what we have to do before we go out there is to handle that within ourselves. And I've talked about this on other Zoom calls, but our bodies are wonderfully made to be able to metabolize the intensity of those emotions. And we can do that in our own homes before we go, before we decide to go, but before we get out there, to be able to go through a process where we can soothe our body and settle it enough to be able to really pause for a moment and to just notice the sensations that are happening in our body that go with that fear and that anger. And then accept that discomfort, to know that that is absolutely what any of us are going to be going through as human beings, and stay present to it and allow those sensations and those emotions and those thoughts to move through our bodies. Because what we need to do is to go out there having full access to our prefrontal cortex. And that's not going to happen if we are in an acute state of fight or flight or freeze, right? So when we are out there, I just want to talk about some rapid resets that we can do that can help us in the moment be able to stay regulated. And that's grounding, just stopping for a moment and just feeling our feet on the ground and feeling the support of the ground and just noticing what happens in our bodies when we feel the solidity of being grounded. To walk around and take a walk. I mean, yes, you can walk away, but sometimes just to take a walk, just to move our bodies, to be able to move that energy through. The other is to orient, look around slowly, and just notice our environment and what is there. We can also take a moment and push up against a wall or lean up against something and just push the energy in there. Sing or hum to ourselves. We can, or you're bring water out there, take a sip and just notice what happens on the inside when we feel the water going down our throat and into our stomach. And then tapping side to side, that bilateral tapping, which we can do as we are walking, or we can do it like this, but you can also do it just with your hands down on your hips and just noticing what happens on the inside in terms of the kind of settling that can happen. Because the biggest ally that we have out there is ourselves to be fully regulated.
Mom, normalize this for us for a minute. I mean, we're having these huge responses of fear to what was a huge tragedy. Why do our bodies react this way? Can you help us understand why these reactions are normal?
So
And
what happens inside of us when we experience something really huge is that our sympathetic nervous system gets into an amped up place because it's ready to go. We are feeling threat and we feel all that. And have you all had that experience of just feeling so amped up and not knowing where to put the energy? But that's absolutely what our bodies are doing. They're getting ready to fight or to flee. And that is absolutely normal. But what we can do is to help ourselves bring that energy down so that we can have effective fighting.
thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us tonight and for the thousands of people who are still on this call. Tisha talked about the importance of staying safe and de-escalating and taking breaths. And my mom has given us all now some additional grounding techniques. Many people here are feeling fear, grief, anger. And I hope that tonight you have been given information and tools to figure out how to channel that. And we are so grateful to all of our speakers and to every single person here for joining us tonight. What we heard is that care itself, it's a form of power. Staying connected to others in your community, taking the lead from those who are most impacted. We learned that we need to rest when we need to, and then continuing to show up in ways that work for you. That is our power. We also heard that fear thrives in isolation, but it loses grip in community. And that is the very good news for all of us. So when we show up together, refuse to be silent or disengage, we're fighting back against that fear. You don't have to do everything and you don't have to do it all at once, but there are things that we all can do. And we've given you some concrete examples of that tonight. Let's go over them again. You can contact your member of Congress. Thousands of you have done this on this call. Let's share that action so that thousands more do it in the next 24 hours and the days ahead. We have to be in this for the long haul. You can join the social bank. I heard 800 of you did just in the moments that we shared the link. We're going to have to create even more opportunities for that because it sounds like something people do want to figure out how to do to engage constructively online. Okay. And then finally, get involved locally. Find your new best friends. Join a Troubled Nation group. Start one if there isn't one yet where you live, or get involved with Chamber of Mothers, Mothers Out Front, Mother Forward, Vote Mama, Parents Together, all the wonderful groups who partnered with us for this event tonight. So we've honored Renee Good tonight and others who have lost their lives. And we've done that not by turning away, but by staying connected and staying committed to the values that brought all of us here together tonight. And I thank every single one of you for joining us for that.